Welcome. I'm Elizabeth Garles, past president of International Chapter, PEO, and on behalf of all Henry County, Iowa sisters, I indeed bring you greetings upon PEO's 150th birthday. We are celebrating on the campus of historic Iowa Wesleyan University, Mount Pleasant. And welcome indeed to our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You are here, PEO's birthplace. From here in this very same chapel auditorium that saw the 40th year Supreme Grand Chapter Convention in 1909, from here in chapel auditorium, wherever you are across the North American continent, happy birthday, PEO. Please join me in repeating this greeting. Happy birthday, PEO. The organizational structure that developed from Mount Pleasant is one of the strengths of our sisterhood. We are very pleased to have the Executive Board of Iowa State Chapter, many past presidents of PEO's home state chapter, as well as members from the Executive Committee planning the upcoming convention of International Chapter to be held in Des Moines. Representatives from International Chapter will be introduced as they participate in this program. Alice Bird was Chapter A's first president. Current Chapter Original A president is Patricia Bensmiller, and we look forward to her greetings.
Thank you, Liz. It's my honor to bring you greetings from Chapter Original A. Welcome home. Home to Mount Pleasant, home to Mount Pleasant, the home of Iowa Wesleyan, and the home where our sisterhood began. We welcome you and are glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Pat. From our first local chapter of 7 collegians to now nearly 230,000 sisters in almost 6,000 local chapters, in concentric circles from this place, PEO expanded. May I introduce a past president of International Chapter, Susan Reese Sellers from Houston, Texas, who will present remarks from President Sue Baker, who is unable to be present due to weather concerns. Susan?
On behalf of Sue Baker, President, International Chapter, I am honored to present her greetings. Good evening. I am feeling incredibly blessed to have an integral part in this milestone celebration for PEO. The way of self-giving set forth by 7 brilliant young women 150 years ago has been timeless. We endeavor to model the vitality and generous hearts of our founding sisters, Mary Allen, Alice Bird, Hattie Briggs, Alice Coffin, Suella Pearson, Frank Rhodes, and Ella Stewart. As today we revel in the boundless success of their passionate vision, the beauty of our virtues, faith, love, purity, justice, and truth, and with extreme gratitude for the contributions of each sister, past, present, and future. We have continued to build on a strong foundation, and it is with great pride and passion that we pledge to continue the valiant legacy of our beloved sisterhood.
Thank you, Susan and Sue. From the beginning, fine music has always been an important component of PEO celebrations. We welcome Carmen Heaton and Heidi Reeby, members of Chapter OX Mount Pleasant, who will play for us a lovely duet. outstanding musicians. Thank you. From footprints on rough paths over a stile to entries on today's digital cloud, PEO's history is that of a journey through time. How do we keep that history? We can be savers. Just put the tangible items in the shoebox under the guest room bed and be savers. Or we can preserve those items. We can manage their lifespan with conservation practices. Or we can take those preserved items and arrange them in topics, sequence, and timelines and be archivists. Or we can take those preserved, archived items, put them in context, and be not only caregivers, but be storytellers. Sharing the story is what makes heritage relevant. Tonight, our story is from two sisters like us who are reflecting on the past like us. Their time is 90 years ago, 1929. One of these sisters is Winona Evans Reeves, Wesleyan class of 1891. A longtime editor of the PEO Record, Winona was a masterful storyteller. Writing on her editor's page 80 years ago, Winona wrote about reflecting and remembering. She quotes a character in a novel saying, quote, "If only there could be an invention that bottled up memory like scent, and it never faded, and it never grew stale, and then when one wanted it, the bottle could be uncorked, and it would be like living the moment all over again." Helping us live the moment over again are Lynn Reimars and Christine Price, both past presidents of Chapter I Am, Barrington, Illinois. Home again. May I introduce one of Wesleyan's most illustrious alumni, a graduate from the class of 1891, a former member of both the original Chapter A, initiated in 1889, and Chapter AJ, the later chapter of only Wesleyan collegiate members, past president of Iowa Grand Chapter, and a past president of Supreme Chapter. As a writer of PEO history and the longest serving editor of the PEO Record, Winona Evans Reeves is the superb link between the founders and PEO today. May I introduce Florence Thompson McKibben, 11 years older than Winona, but initiated in 1892 into Chapter A 3 years later. Florence was widowed quite young and raised her son as a single parent. Her employment 1918 to 1931 as Iowa Wesleyan librarian began the same year that Winona took over editing the PEO Record following the death of Effie Hoffman Rogers. With deep roots at Iowa Wesleyan, these two loyal PEOs served with love and appreciation for Old Main, PEO's birthplace. In 1917, the founding site in the music room had been permanently designated by the college for PEO's purposes. So while Winona was editing records from her Keokuk and later Chicago home, Florence began collecting records for preservation at Wesleyan. She chaired the original lay committee that also received tangible gifts from founders' families and early Mount Pleasant PEOs. Their gifts from home and heart were preserved in the music room in 1922 that became a museum-type setting for generations of sisters. Today, this memory room remains the first tribute to our birthplace, and we are indebted to Florence for leadership and diligent work. These two dedicated historians are PEO storytellers. Let's listen in to their conversation taking place in the top floor of the PEO Memorial Library. This building had been dedicated in 1927 as the second tribute to the founders. It is now autumn 1929. Winona and Florence are seated in Memorial Hall, the executive office of the sisterhood. This conversation is nearly 90 years old. They are reflecting upon the unveiling ceremonies of our now familiar founders' official portraits that had been held here in this top floor hall earlier in September.
Winona, thanks for stopping by to see me before you take the train back to Chicago. We have so enjoyed having you visit home again, and we certainly appreciated all your preparations for the remarks at the portrait's dedication.
Lawrence, I was one of the first off of the Chicago train coming down here from the Supreme Chapter Convention. I wanted to get to campus quickly so I could make sure everything was ready. It had been some while that I had been back here to Mount Pleasant, and I did not want to miss the town tours that the VILs were driving us around before the ceremonies. And I was so happy to join the others to go to the cemeteries to pay my respects to our founding sisters.
I'm so glad you were able to do that. I've just been sitting here looking through this old scrapbook, reminiscing. Would you care to look through some old photographs and keepsakes with me?
I would love that, Florence. Look at these pictures.
Oh my
Maine
goodness,
brings back memories.
it certainly does.
Well, would you look at this, Florence? Here's the invitation of PEO's first party held the day after Christmas in 1870. Here is what the invitation says. The pleasure of your company is requested at the Sidereal Soiree. What a lovely, exciting name for a very special party. And I remember that Chapter 8 minutes had read that this was going to be a reunion of PEOs. Maybe some of the members had come home at Christmas that year. Anyways, we PEOs have been enjoying reunions, coming home here to Mount Pleasant ever since. And as I look at this scrapbook, I see the picture of the Brazelton house where the party was held in the second floor dining room. It included a memorable turkey dinner with all of the fixings.
That must have been such a special event. You know, so many things have happened here at Wesleyan and in Mount Pleasant to just build our sisterhood, especially in those beginning years, with expansion and all. You know what? Here is the picture. This is the picture of the Bartlett house where many of those planning meetings happened. Oh, look here. This is Alice Bird Babb. This picture must have been taken just about the time that she helped draft the constitutional form that we currently use. That was 1893. And Mary Allen Stafford. I'm sure that Alice appreciated having Mary Allen Stafford back home in Mount Pleasant in those 90s when Mary's husband, Charles, was president of Iowa Wesleyan. Oh, look at this. This is the obituary clipping from Ella Stewart. Her funeral, it says, was held at the Asbury Methodist Church in 1894.
She died too early.
Too early.
Why, Florence, here's a postcard showing that new fountain that Chapter 8 provided for Mount Pleasant Central Park in the early 1900s. While community service is a fine opportunity for local chapters. I am very pleased that since 1907, that PEO as a sisterhood now has chosen to have unified projects that we all can support together, like ELF, the Educational Loan Fund.
Indeed, indeed. Let's see. Do you remember Hervey Crane? This is a picture of Hervey Crane's home. He was the jeweler that helped the founders get those first pins made. This old picture also reminds me of his daughter-in-law, May. May was a member of the chapter in Washington State that helped move PEO from the United States into Canada. Weren't you a part of that convention? Weren't you presiding at the 1911 convention of Supreme Chapter held in St. Louis? Weren't you? Yes, I remember. And so that's when the charter was presented, correct? Chapter A, Vancouver, British Columbia. What a great Mount Pleasant connection.
And what a memorable event that was. You know, there have been several other Mount Pleasant links to Canada. And Florence, you have been a link to our past. You have been collecting keepsakes from our founding families and also the early days of our sisterhood. Why, here is a clipping from the Wesleyan News. It tells of the commencement of 1922, and it tells of the opening of the nunnery room in Old Main. Look at all of the lovely things that you helped to bring to this room.
Thank you, Winona. That has been a joy in my life. There's a clipping here about a vignette that is about the founding story of our 7 originals. It was staged by the young members of Mount Pleasant chapter. It's a pity there were no photographers present because we know those costumes would have been very, very fine.
And I was happy to report all about it in my 1923 history book.
Yes.
It makes me wonder, Florence, if the idea of historical pageants and vignettes, why will they continue in future PEO celebrations? Why will they be a part of the 150th year anniversary of our sisterhood? Can you even imagine, my goodness, to think 150 years, oh, what an opportunity and occasion that will be. Oh, Florence, to think of that time. But speaking of time, I must get to the train depot, for you know, the train to Chicago will surely be on time.
It surely will. Oh, what a wonderful day we had at the portraits unveiling. It was so wonderful for you to make all those preparations for those remarks. We really thank you. And another thing, I heard that Lulu Corkill Williams made a presentation at the convention. Do you happen to have her remarks?
I do.
Well, if you do, would you please share them with us, and then perhaps we can put them in our scrapbook.
Dear Lulu, she was one of the first 1869 initiates, and she became a real PEO builder from this place. And she summed up our founders in such a beautiful way. She said, "The secret of the founders' beautiful lives is that they lived ordinary lives in the best way they knew, making every day full of worthwhile work and always trying to make it better than the day before."
Winona, that is our legacy and our challenge.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
Thank you very much, Winona and Florence. Participating in our Heritage Candle Lighting Tribute will be members from International Chapter Sesquicentennial Celebration Committee and members from the 150th Celebration Commemorative Book Committee entitled We Who Are Sisters. Susan Reese Sellers, past president International Chapter from Houston, Texas. Carol Nimitz, Chapter Original A, Mount Pleasant. Mary Lasky, Maryland. Ann Conway, New Jersey. Ruth Glancy, Alberta, Canada. Ann Pettigrove, Florida. Following the Supreme Chapter Convention resolution adopted in 1915 that required all local chapters to annually celebrate our founders, many programs and services were written to honor the 7 originals. One such earlier reflection, prepared for Chapter C, New York City, featured lighting a candle in each founder's honor. When that tribute was later presented in Mount Pleasant in 1923, it was prefaced with a personal story by Chapter C member Catherine Gill West, a cousin of Alice Bird Babb. In Catherine's story, read tonight by Chapter Original A President Patricia Bensmiller, we'll hear her reflections and feelings as she recalled her reunion on campus, now 96 years ago.
While visiting in my dear home, Mount Pleasant, Iowa, I was invited to attend a PEO cafeteria supper on the campus of Iowa Wesleyan. Under the magnificent old trees, large and stately, set out many years ago by Dr. Wellington Bird, father of Alice, was a long table filled with good things people out there always take to their picnics and suppers. A large half circle of chairs faced the building, the old building. This was followed by a meeting in the memory room, where we were asked to go up to the room, the historical, the sacred room, where PEO was born. We looked at the material things, the furniture, the pictures, and so on, all in keeping with the period of 1869. There were many photographs of the 7 girls who had been inspired in that room to think of PEO. On the north wall between the windows was a bronze plaque, placed there several years ago with appropriate ceremonies by PEOs in memory of the beginning of the society. I was deeply interested by it all, but more than the physical layout was the feeling, the spirit of PEO was conceived by those 7 women hovered over and filled the room. The spirit of gaiety and confidence of youth, the spirit of wanting to fill the world with love, the spirit of unselfishness, of giving, of trusting, the beautiful spirit of understanding. There, in this atmosphere, dwells the loving spirit of early but everlasting, always growing, always useful PEO.
In memory of those girls, the original 7, and in memory of the original spirit of PEO, we light these candles. This is for the gentle, loving Hattie Riggs, who so early stepped over into the great horizon.
Alice Coffin, who was a power with a marvelous personality.
Alice Stewart, the unselfish, generous, devoted giver of light and help to all those who needed it. Suela Pearson, beautiful, bright, fluttering in the sunshine, bringing joy to all around her.
Alice Byrne. She was brilliant, vivacious, untiring, and a generous friend.
Frank Rhodes, monument of courage, builder of a wonderful house of life.
Mary Allen, sweet, loving, spiritually perfect womanhood.
To you all, we extend loving thanks for your great gift, the undying spirit of PEO.
Thank you. PEO's influence is eternal. We saw yesterday. We look for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll begin our next 150 years. We are opening to the future. And to that future, please stand, join hands as we sing together our opening ode. Opening to the future, based on 150 glorious years. Thank you very much for sharing this special anniversary together. Please join us for more celebration in the chapel foyer, including the opportunity for an additional birthplace keepsake. Thank you very much. Safe travels. Good night.